What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, this is a requested video from our subscribers, and they wanted me to do a video on what if Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, what if they were drafted by the opposing teams in which they are identified with? Now, of course, we know Larry Bird became synonymous with Boston Pride in the 1980s. And Magic Johnson is synonymous with the Showtime Lakers in the 1980s. But what if everything was the same, at least at the time of them being drafted, coaches and rosters, but yet the Celtics drafted Magic Johnson and the Lakers drafted Larry Bird, right? How would those things develop? Now, me personally, because this is something I've seen talked about before, and I've seen others discuss it. And I tend to think that Magic would have had the easier adjustment compared to Larry Bird. I think that, if anything, Magic Johnson enhances the Celtics. I'm not saying that the Celtics couldn't adapt to a faster pace as far as playing style is concerned. They did that, but the Celtics, especially the 85, 86 Celtics, but Bird was, to me, more effective in the half court. Magic, especially the first 7 years of his career or so, was more effective in the full court, right? I can't help but think that if he went to Boston, they would have played a faster pace. I think he would have been a great fit for Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish. I think that their scoring would increase. In particular, the front court guys. I can see Parrish getting a lot easier buckets. Just rim running, rolling. I could just see him getting a lot more buckets playing with Magic Johnson. McHale too, but especially Parrish, right? Now, because Magic's going to give you playmaking, he's going to give you rebounding, he's going to give you some scoring, especially as his game develops as he gets older, adds a mid-range shot, adds even an outside shot the last couple of years in the league before his illness. That's another thing you got to think about too, but I'll get in that later on. One thing I do have to think about, though, is Magic is not a great shooter, right? Especially, like I said, the first half of his career. He's not a great shooter. So if you look at it, if Magic's their point guard, right? Because Bird was a small forward, do they still get Dennis Johnson? I don't think so. I tend to think what happens is that Boston probably does what LA did, and that is maybe draft some athletic shooting guard or an athletic wing that could score. And especially as the 80s progress, I think they add some shooters like a Craig Hodges, a Kyle Macy, maybe even a John Paxson. Depending upon how the draft goes and everything. But they definitely have to shore up their outside shooting a little bit and scoring. Because, in real life, when Magic was drafted by the Lakers, They already had Norm Nixon at point guard. You know, they already had some guys on the roster that could score. So I think that's one of the adjustments that they have to make with their roster. But man, I think Boston with Magic Johnson, I mean, really, I think they're just as good, if perhaps not even better. Now, the one thing you have to be concerned about culturally is we are talking about Boston, not just the team, but Boston. I don't know if the city of Boston is going to immediately take the Magic the way that he is. You know what I'm talking about. Now, I get it. Bill Russell played in the 50s and 60s. We're talking about the late 70s and 80s, but it's still Boston. Okay. I don't think people are going to be breaking into his house and defecating. But Magic, I think, will still have to deal with some incidental racism. And knowing how strong-willed Magic Johnson is, I think he'll try to laugh it off, play it down. Because of who Magic Johnson is, and because of how important he is, I do wonder if he does have some racial incidences. I wonder if the NBA will become more proactive in speaking out against racism in general. You know what I'm saying? Now with Larry Bird, I don't know if I don't think they're playing quite the same speed. You know what I'm saying? With Larry Bird, I think it's a different type of quote unquote showtime. I mean, he does bring you rebounding, he brings you shooting, he brings you playmaking, he brings you clutch play, he brings you, just so much versatility. But LA already has a point guard, as I said, Norm Nixon. So you got Kareem. Now, I will say this: Kareem would be, Larry Bird would be a great on court fit for Kareem. Bird and Kareem's game would be very, very compatible with each other. Okay. Bird is more of a mid-range outside shooter. Kareem is a post player. Sort of like Bird and McHale, but of course Kareem is more dominant than McHale. So that would fit. So I'm wondering if Bird would be a power forward, maybe. Maybe he would, in this scenario, be that transformative player at the power forward position who stretches the floor and has playmaking abilities that we had never seen before. The way that we look at Magic as a transformative point guard, and still will be in that era, Bird will be looked at more so playing the four in that system. I don't think with Norm Nixon there, I don't know if Bird averages as many assists. I know he played with Nate Archibald. I get that. But I think by the time he was playing with Nate in Boston, I think Nate was averaging more around 7 assists, whereas Norm was averaging what, 9 assists, 8, 9 assists. So maybe his assists are more around 4.5 to 5 as opposed to 6 to 7. But I still think that they're a great team. They're going to make some roster adjustments with Larry Bird there, but they're still going to be great, great figures. Hey, I do wonder this though. So in this world, is it that Magic Johnson's the one that hurt his back, shoveling his mom's driveway, and in this scenario, does Larry Bird, is he the one that gets the monkey? I'm just saying, like, how far are we putting this opposite bizarro world into play here? You know what I'm saying? But it's a very interesting scenario, honestly. I know, and there's such great players and such team-orientated players that I think they'll be successful even if they interchange cities. I don't know how many championships. I don't know all of that shit. We don't know. But I think they would be very successful, and I think they would win multiple championships if they stayed healthy. Even if Larry Bird became synonymous with LA, even though I think personality-wise, he doesn't fit the city as much. You know what I'm saying? I think Boston is the better personality fit, but hey, if that means that Bird has to step out of his comfort zone and appear in a few more commercials, uh, you know, does the commissioner ask him to kind of, I don't know, cut more promos to kind of play into his, Beverly Hillbillies type persona, the country bumpkin in the big city type shit? I mean, I don't know. Maybe they play that angle. But anyway, I think that by the end of the decade, both figures will be beloved by both cities, even if they were drafted with the opposites. You know what I'm saying? If Magic was in Boston, uh, if Larry was in LA, it'll still be all love. You know what I'm saying? Remember, uh, when Magic Johnson retired due to having the HIV virus, at least allegedly, right? One of the first things that Larry Bird did in the game that they played that night was, I think he did a behind the back pass, which was a tribute to Magic. You know what I'm saying? They started off as foes, but at the end they became good friends. You know what I'm saying? So they definitely respected one another. But anyway, tell me what you guys think.